A journey that is part intrigue and part provocation. The deputy leader of China's Taiwan region, Lai Ching-te, set off for Paraguay on Saturday to attend the inauguration of the country's new president. He landed in New York for a so-called stopover on Sunday. During his journey back to Taiwan, he had another layover in San Francisco on Wednesday. China deplores and strongly condemns the U.S. decision to arrange the so-called stopovers for Lai Ching-te and calls him a troublemaker through and through. Who is this 63-year-old troublemaker? What did he plan to achieve through the visits? And what impact would these visits have on the situation across the Taiwan Straits? I was pleased to be joined by Professor Peng, head of the Graduate Institute for Taiwan Studies of Xiamen University in southern China. I started by asking him how he understands Lai's intentions behind the visits.
I think Lai Ching-te's visit to the United States mainly has two intentions. One is for the election, and the other is for Taiwan independence. The leadership election in Taiwan will be held in January next year, and Lai Ching-te is the DPP candidate running for the election. I think Lai Ching-te hopes to gain support from the United States and hopes that Washington can trust him and be satisfied with his cross-strait policies. And on the other hand, he tries to deceive the people of Taiwan with American support. And he tries to tell the voters in Taiwan that he has already gotten the United States support and passed the so-called exams of the U.S. government. And another of his intention, I think, is to rely on the United States for Taiwan independence. You see, during his so-called stopover in the United States, Lai Ching-te participated in political activities, and he received interviews to the media. And all of these activities and interviews included remarks on Taiwan independence.
So help us understand, why does the candidate or candidates from different parties for the office of the leader of Taiwan need to get endorsement from the United States? That seems to be a tradition all along. If they don't get the go-ahead or a nod from the United States, they don't stand a chance. What is the relationship?
In Taiwan's so-called general election, almost every candidate will go to the United States to get interviews of the U.S. government officials, and they always guarantee to the U.S. officials that they can maintain the so-called peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait, and they can do everything to favor the United States' national interest. And I think these kinds of interviews or exams betrayed Taiwan's interest. And these kinds of actions selling out the island to the United States. It is shameful for Taiwanese people, and it's a disgrace to the Taiwanese people. But you just mentioned the so-called tradition. I don't think it's a good tradition. It's a bad tradition. This means that the United States has a big influence on Taiwan's election, and the United States tries to interfere in Taiwan's election. Not just like the people in the White House or in the State Department said that they will never interfere in Taiwan's election. That's not true.
Well, during a speech Lai Ching-te gave in Manhattan, he said, if Taiwan is safe, the world is safe. If the Taiwan Straits are peaceful, then the world is peaceful. And in July, he also authored an op-ed in Wall Street Journal outlining a so-called four-pillar peace plan for the Taiwan Straits. Now, the Chinese embassy characterized his support for the cross-strait status quo as advocating for peaceful separation and one China, one Taiwan. How do you interpret Lai's emphasis on peace? And do you believe he really genuinely prioritizes Taiwan, the peace over the Taiwan Straits?
Yes, you just mentioned his peace is very different from the peaceful reunification peace or the peace and stability, what we understand originally. His peace is peaceful separatist, and his peace is related to deterrence. So, but the problem is whether Taiwan can deter China, mainland China's activities, and also whether Lai Ching-te is capable of achieving peace. We all know that Lai Ching-te has openly advocated for Taiwan independence several times when he was the legislator and when he was the mayor of Tainan. And also he described himself as a pragmatic worker for Taiwan independence. And, in the island, he got strong support from Taiwan independence fundamentalists. So he not only also at the same time he refused the one China principle, and he said he would never accept the 1992 consensus. Also, in recent days, we can see attacks Chinese mainland's political and social system. He advocates the so-called democracy or freedom or something like that. But at the same time, they attacked many China's political system. He also is hindering the cross-strait people to exchanges. So you can, if you look at the history of what Lai Ching-te said and what Lai Ching-te did in the past, I don't think the people in Taiwan or in the world would believe that Lai Ching-te can bring peace to the Taiwan Strait.
The United States government, they have repeatedly said that they do not support Taiwan independence. What do you gauge is the U.S. attitude towards Lai Ching-te, and by allowing him to so-called stop over in the United States, is that a tacit endorsement of Lai as a potential candidate for the Taiwan leadership position?
I think the United States want to make sure that the Lai Ching-te can follow the United States policy. They are not so sure whether Lai Ching-te can bring peace to the Taiwan Strait or not. They are not so sure whether Lai Ching-te will push forward Taiwan independence or not. I think the foreign policy of the United States has always worked for its own national interest. Well, for the United States' national interest, not Taiwan's so-called interest. So, and the United States just, and Taiwan is only a pawn for the United States to contain China's rise or contain China's development. And Lai Ching-te, what Lai Ching-te did and what Lai Ching-te said is trying to make the United States to be confident for his policy when he win the so-called the election. And I think, but I don't think the United States is fully confident about Lai Ching-te. And the United States will make its own judgment.
When questioned about Lai's U.S. stopover, the U.S. State Department spokesperson said there is no reason to overtalk this transit into anything escalatory. He added, this is consistent with our one China policy. We're not interested in deviating from the status quo. It is not any kind of pretext for coercion or provocative activity. Now, the United States knows how touchy China is about Taiwan, right? It is the core among China's core interests. This has been said over and over again. And yet, the United States allowed someone who has repeatedly and explicitly supported Taiwan independence to land, knowing that this would be interpreted as a tacit endorsement of his political view. Is the United States playing with fire, or, not sending a very vague message to the world, to Beijing and to Taiwan, and not wisely, making an unwise move there.
The United States always say something and do another thing. That this time is the same. The United States said they will not change one China policy, but allowing Lai Ching-te to stop over in the United States is a violation of one China principle and a violation of three China-U.S. communiques. And I think the United States is cheating. The world is cheating himself. So when I talk with some U.S. scholars and officials, they understand very well that Lai Ching-te's Taiwan independence stance is not so good for the maintenance of peace and stability across the Taiwan Strait. Mm-hmm. And Lai Ching-te's Taiwan independence stance definitely aroused the suspicion of the U.S. government. And because they fear that the Lai Ching-te will be uncontrollable.
So why did the United States allow him to use the United States to gain voters on the island?
What the United States is trying to do is to stop Lai Ching-te from harming the United States interests. So, and a few days ago, when Lai Ching-te mentioned that if Taiwan leader could enter the White House and the island's political objectives will be automatically achieved. So the United States government expressed great concern over Lai Ching-te's remarks. Why do you want to enter the White House? What is the political objectives of what Lai Ching-te mentioned? I think in the island, everybody regard the so-called political objective is Taiwan independence. So Lai Ching-te exposed his ambitions to push forward Taiwan independence. That deeply worried the United States government.
Well, good for them. Now, Lai Ching-te also delivered a 25-minute speech in Manhattan, as I mentioned, where he said Taiwan should serve as a beacon of freedom, democracy, and human rights and should not surrender to authoritarianism. In an interview, he also said he also hoped that the international community would recognize Taiwan as a democracy sharing values with the global community. Is he playing the democracy card to gloss over his separatist agenda?
Lai Ching-te wants to try to find the common language with the United States. The United States believes that the so-called freedom and democracy should be valued by all of the world, and Taiwan is so-called, they call themselves is a democracy society or something like that. So they are trying to find common words with the United States, and with these kinds of common words, they can gain support from the United States, and the United States will support Lai Ching-te's Taiwan independence stance or something.
Is Taiwan a real democracy?
Of course not. When I talk with some people in Taiwan, the people said no matter what parties, KMT or DPP, they are not so satisfied. But they have no choice. They have to choose one. Also, when if you travel to Taiwan, you can say some people will tell you democracy is just the day they vote. After the day, there was no democracy.
I have interviewed a Taiwanese young person who is a video blogger on the mainland, and when she advocates reunification, when he advocates integration between the two sides, her video got heavily criticized. She became victim of Wang Bao. So what exactly would cause such online violence, if I may use this word? What's the reasons behind such violence against people who dare to speak up for reunification and reintegration?
When DPP came to power again in 2016, they're trying to make an atmosphere in Taiwan that reunification is dangerous, reunification is not right, and they're trying to mislead the people in Taiwan that reunification should jeopardize our life of democracy or freedom or something like that. And in mainland China, in this years we want to deepen the integrated development. Integrated development, we just want to encourage more cross-strait people-to-people exchanges. We want to encourage more young people from Taiwan and to mainland China. They will have a more chance to develop their career. They want to have a better life in mainland China. I think that will benefit the young people in Taiwan because they have little chance in Taiwan University year because of the bad economic atmosphere. I know many young people from Taiwan. They have a very good life in mainland China. They start their career. They find maybe they have a family here and they studied here. They feel very good, and the China government treated them very well. We released a lot of policies favored their development in mainland China. So, but the DPP authorities never says that in the mainland. They just jeopardize the cross-strait and people-to-people exchanges. Right now they still refuse to open mainland China travelers to Taiwan.
Finally, the role of the United States in the entire Taiwan question. In the very beginning, they were supporting the Kuomintang. They sailed a U.S. Aircraft carrier in the Taiwan Straits as the People's Liberation Army was planning to finally, liberate Taiwan. All of these years, how do you look at the role or the influence of the United States in the Taiwan question?
And the United States is the biggest obstacle for the unification of China, and the situation across the Taiwan Strait over the past several years has been we call complicated and severe. So one of the reasons is DPP authorities' provocation for Taiwan independence, and another reason is the United States intervention over Taiwan issue. So in the last few years, the DPP authorities and the United States government came closer and closer. And the United States want to use Taiwan authorities contain China's rights, and Taiwan authorities want to use the United States to pursue Taiwan independence. So what they are trying to do finally is to stop the reunification and contain mainland China's rights. So the goal just almost the same. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Professor Li Peng, head of Graduate Institute for Taiwan Studies of Xiamen University.
Thank you. It's my great pleasure.
Professor Li Peng, head of the Graduate Institute for Taiwan Studies of Xiamen University. When we come back, what is Taiwan independence all about? Earlier, I talked to an American professor who has lived both on the mainland and in Taiwan. Stay with us.